On a stormy night behind a neon club, a blind street violinist collapses, poison burning through her veins, and the city's coldest kingpin does the unthinkable. He lifts her into his car and swears she won't die on his pavement. He locks down a penthouse, marks her under his protection, and cuts a blood truce with enemies to buy her 3 days. But whispers spread. She's the missing heir to a vanished syndicate, a living target with a price on her head. When a trusted lieutenant sells them out, the girl is taken by a warlord who holds the final ingredient to her cure. The boss answers with scorched earth, a midnight siege, and one last, untested antidote that could stop her heart or save it. If the most dangerous man in the city risks his empire for one dying stranger, what secret is she worth? Who betrayed them first? And who will bleed to keep her alive? The penthouse's medical equipment cast an eerie blue glow across Isolde's pale face. Rain pelted against the floor-to-ceiling windows, creating a steady rhythm that matched the beeping monitors. Alaric sat motionless in the leather chair beside her bed, his dark suit still impeccable despite the chaos of the night. His eyes tracked every slight movement of her chest, every flutter of her eyelids. The physician had stabilized her for now, but time was their enemy. 72 hours. The number echoed in his mind like a death sentence. "Sir!" A guard's voice came through his earpiece. "The initial toxicology report is ready." Alaric pressed his comm link. "Send it to my tablet." He didn't take his eyes off Isolde as he reviewed the data. The designer poison was sophisticated, a signature blend he'd seen only once before. His jaw clenched. The Castillo cartel. They'd been pushing into his territory for months, but this was personal. A soft whimper drew his attention back to Isolde. Her fingers twitched against the white sheets, and he found himself reaching for her hand before he could stop himself. Her skin felt cold, too cold. "The monitors," she whispered, voice barely audible. "They're too loud." Of course, her heightened hearing. Without hesitation, Alaric adjusted the volume settings. "Better?" She gave a slight nod, then tensed. "Where am I?" "Somewhere safe." He kept his voice low and steady, knowing she would read every nuance. "You're in my penthouse medical suite. You were poisoned." Isolde's unseeing eyes opened, moving sightlessly around the room. Her other senses were clearly mapping her surroundings. The hum of equipment, the smell of antiseptic, the texture of the sheets. "Why are you helping me?" A fair question, one he wasn't entirely sure how to answer. "Someone targeted you specifically. I want to know why." "That's not an answer." Even weak, her voice carried steel. "You're Alaric Voss. You don't help street musicians without reason." He allowed himself a small smile. Her reputation for directness wasn't exaggerated. "You knew who I was when you approached me tonight. Everyone knows who you are." She shifted slightly, wincing. "The question is, how you knew about the poison before I collapsed." Alaric leaned back, studying her. Most people wouldn't have picked up on that detail. "I recognize the scent. It's distinctive to those who know what to look for." Thunder crashed outside, and Isolde flinched at the sound. Her hand tightened unconsciously around his, and he found himself squeezing back gently. "Your heart rate just increased," she observed. "You're worried. Not just curious. Actually worried." He kept forgetting how much she could read from the smallest changes in breath and pulse. "We have 72 hours to find the antidote." "Yes, I'm worried." "Why me?" Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm nobody." "I doubt that very much." Alaric reached for the water glass, helping her take a sip. "Someone went to considerable expense and risked to target you with this specific poison. The question is, who had access to you today?" Isolde's brow furrowed in concentration. "I played my usual spots, the coffee shop on 8th, the park, then the jazz club. Nothing unusual except..." She paused. "There was a woman. She bumped into me between sets, apologized with a Spanish accent." Alaric's fingers tightened imperceptibly on the water glass. "Castillo," he muttered. "What?" "Nothing." He set the glass down carefully. "Rest now. I have some calls to make." She caught his sleeve as he stood. "Wait, I can help. I remember everything I hear, voices, footsteps, conversations. If this woman is connected..." "Later," he said firmly. "The poison is still active in your system. Sleep is the best thing for you right now." Isolde's face set in stubborn lines. "I'm not your prisoner, Mr. Voss, and I'm not helpless." "No," he agreed softly. You're not. But right now, you're under my protection. Sleep. Please. Something in his tone must have convinced her because she settled back against the pillows. You'll wake me if anything changes. Yes. He watched as her breathing slowly evened out, her face relaxing into sleep. Only then did he step away from the bed, moving to the windows where the storm raged outside. His reflection stared back at him, expression hard. Someone had brought this fight to his doorstep, using an innocent woman as bait or warning. They would learn why that was a fatal mistake. He pressed his comm link. Get me everything on the Castillo cartel's movements in the last month, and find out why they'd target a blind violinist. Sir, his security chief responded. There's something else. The woman, Isolde Hart, she doesn't exist in any database before 5 years ago. Alaric turned back to look at the sleeping figure in the bed. The mystery around her deepened, but right now, keeping her alive took precedence. They had less than 70 hours remaining, and he intended to use every second. The storm continued to batter the windows, but inside the medical suite, the only sounds were the quieted monitors and Isolde's steady breathing. Alaric resumed his vigil in the chair beside her, his mind already mapping out the brutal chess game ahead. Someone had made the first move. Now it was his turn. Sunlight warmed Isolde's face as consciousness returned. The bed beneath her felt impossibly soft, nothing like her modest apartment mattress. Her fingers traced Egyptian cotton sheets, sensing thread counts that probably cost more than a month's earnings on the street. Good morning. Alaric's voice came from her left, measured and calm. How are you feeling? She took stock of her body. The burning in her veins had subsided to a dull ache. Better. Different. Her hands moved outward, mapping the space. Where exactly am I? The master suite of my penthouse. Your belongings are here, cane, backpack, violin. My team retrieved and sanitized everything. Isolde sat up slowly, orienting herself to the unfamiliar space. I need to leave. I have commitments. You need to stay alive. His tone hardened slightly. The poison in your system is engineered. Without the antidote, you have approximately 60 hours left. Her breath caught. You're holding me prisoner? I'm keeping you safe. She heard him rise, footsteps crossing to what sounded like a closet. The people who poisoned you will try again. Here you have protection. I've managed on my own for years, she challenged, swinging her legs over the bed's edge. The plush carpet caught her bare feet. Not against this level of threat. Something rustled. Fabric, maybe clothing. Your cane is 3 steps forward, slightly right. Isolde found it exactly where he said, fingers wrapping around the familiar grip. I don't like being controlled, Mr. Voss. Alaric, he corrected quietly. And this isn't about control. Let me show you the room properly. His footsteps approached, then stopped. May I? He asked, his voice closer but not touching. The request surprised her. She nodded, then added, Yes. His hand touched her elbow lightly, guiding without grabbing. The bed is centered on the north wall. There's a nightstand on either side. I've placed tactile markers on the corners. He led her to touch small raised dots on the wood. The bathroom is east, 10 steps. The door stays open, and I've marked the counter edges and fixtures. They moved through the space methodically. Alaric described each piece of furniture, letting her touch the markers he'd placed, different textures for different items. Near the bed, he showed her a raised map of the entire floor plan. My security team is outside. The elevator needs a code, which I'll give you. There's a panic button by the bed and in the bathroom. He paused. No one enters without your explicit permission. Isolde traced the map again, memorizing. You've done this before? Accommodated someone without sight? No, but I understand the importance of autonomy. His phone buzzed and she heard him check it. We've traced the poison source. I need to meet with someone who can provide a temporary antidote. Someone you don't trust, she observed, catching the tension in his voice. No one in this business is trustworthy. He moved away, fabric rustling as he presumably put on a jacket. There's food in the kitchen. My housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, will bring lunch. She's 5'2", walks with a slight limp in her right leg, and speaks with a Taiwanese accent. Isolde appreciated the detailed description. You're very thorough. In my world, details determine survival. He was by the door now. One more thing. His voice dropped lower. While you're under my protection, no one touches you without your explicit consent. Not my men, not my staff, not me. The promise settled something in her chest she hadn't realized was tight with anxiety. Even if I try to leave? Even then, though I hope you'll trust me enough to stay. Keys jingled softly. We'll talk more when I return. Rest. Let the toxin burn through your system slowly. Isolde listened as he moved to the elevator, the soft whir of doors opening. Alaric? She called. The doors paused. Yes. Thank you. For the markers, the map. Most people just grab and steer. I'm not most people. The elevator dinged. Try to rest, Isolde. She tracked his departure through the building's subtle vibrations, then began carefully exploring her new space. The room was larger than her entire apartment, with windows she could feel radiating afternoon warmth. Somewhere in the distance, rain still fell, a gentle percussion against glass. Her fingers found her violin case, carefully propped against a chair. Everything inside was exactly as she'd left it, though the case itself smelled faintly of whatever they'd used to sanitize it. Her bow was intact, the rosin exactly where she always kept it. The surveillance equipment hummed at the edges of her awareness, cameras, motion sensors, probably more sophisticated security than she could detect. She was both prisoner and protected guest, though Alaric's promise about consent suggested he understood the difference between safety and control. Isolde settled into a plush armchair, letting her senses map the space more thoroughly. The air carried hints of sandalwood and leather, clean but masculine. The furniture was obviously expensive, but chosen for comfort over show. Even the acoustic properties of the room suggested careful design. Sound absorbed rather than echoed, making it easier to track movement and location. She wondered what Alaric saw when he looked at her. A liability? A puzzle? The way he'd prepared the room spoke of consideration beyond mere duty. The markers, the map, the detailed descriptions. He'd thought about her needs specifically, not just general security. The rain continued its gentle pattern against the windows as afternoon light warmed her skin. Somewhere below, Alaric was walking into a meeting that could save her life, though she sensed he expected treachery. She should be more frightened, she supposed. Instead, she felt oddly steady, as if the ground beneath her had finally stopped shifting. Her fingers found the violin strings, not playing yet, just touching. Music had always been her anchor, her way of making sense of a world she could no longer see. Now she sat in a crime lord's penthouse, poison in her veins, while the soft hum of surveillance kept watch, and the rain whispered secrets against the glass. The ferry terminal loomed against the darkening sky, its abandoned hulk a perfect place for dangerous dealings. Alaric approached alone, his footsteps echoing off rusted metal and crumbling concrete. Above, hidden in the shadows, his snipers waited for his signal. He'd chosen to enter unarmed, a calculated risk that spoke of either confidence or desperation. Inside, the air hung thick with salt and decay. Don Martinez lounged against a stack of forgotten crates, flanked by 4 guards. A small metal case sat beside him. "Boss," Martinez drawled, "crossing territories without invitation." "You know why I'm here?" Alaric's voice carried the weight of glaciers. "The antidote." Martinez lifted the case, letting it catch what little light filtered through broken windows. "Curious thing, isn't it? How a blind violinist caught such a specific toxin, one might wonder what she knows." "She knows nothing?" Alaric kept his stance relaxed, though his jaw tightened. "Name your price." "Oh, but it's not about money." Martinez's smile turned predatory. "It's about information, about loyalty, about that fascinating security system you've developed for moving product through the Port Authority." Alaric didn't blink. "The girl dies in 72 hours. The antidote buys 3 days. You're not asking for information, you're asking for leverage." "Smart man." Martinez opened the case, revealing a single vial. "Though, I wonder why you care. She's nothing to you." Without warning, Alaric pulled a knife from his sleeve. Before anyone could react, he slashed his own palm, blood welling dark against his skin. "I swear a blood truce," he said, voice carrying to every corner of the terminal. "The girl Isolde Hart is inviolable under my protection. Any move against her breaks this oath and triggers immediate retaliation. No negotiations, no mercy." The terminal fell silent. Even Martinez's guards shifted uneasily. A blood truce was ancient code, rarely invoked, never broken. It meant Alaric was betting his entire empire on this one protection. Martinez studied him for a long moment. "You're full of surprises, Voss." He held out the vial. 3 days. Use them wisely." Alaric took the vial with his unbloodied hand. "The formula?" "Standard delivery. Slow IV drip over 6 hours." Martinez's smile returned. "Give the violinist my regards." Alaric left without another word, the vial secure in his pocket. His palm throbbed, blood soaking into his sleeve, but his step never faltered. Above, his snipers maintained their watch until he was clear. The city blurred past his car windows as he raced back to the penthouse. The physician was waiting, equipment ready. Isolde lay pale against the sheets, her breathing shallow but steady. "Hold still," the doctor murmured as he inserted the IV. "This will take several hours." Alaric watched the clear liquid begin its slow drip into her veins. Gradually, her color improved, her breathing deepened. Around 11, her eyes fluttered open. "You're back," she said softly. "Rest." He pulled a chair closer. "The antidote needs time to work. Did you get what you needed?" 3 days. He studied her face. "How do you feel?" "Less like I'm dying." Her lips curved slightly. "More like I've been hit by a truck." The doctor finished adjusting her monitors. "The worst should pass by morning. Call if anything changes." He packed his bag and left them alone. Alaric reached into his pocket, withdrawing a small box. "There's something we need to discuss." Isolde turned her head toward the sound. "That doesn't sound promising." "It's protection." He opened the box, removing a ring. "This matches the penthouse security protocols. Wearing it marks you under my protection. It will prevent kidnapping attempts, warn off rivals." "But not a romantic gesture," she said carefully. "No." He took her hand, sliding the ring onto her finger. "Simply practical. The city sees what it expects to see. Let them think what they will, it keeps you safer." The ring felt cool against her skin, its weight unfamiliar. "Your world is full of symbols, isn't it? Everything means something else." "Yes." He released her hand. "Get some rest. The doctor will check your progress in the morning." Isolde listened to him move away, heard the soft click of a door. The ring sat heavy on her finger, a constant reminder of her new reality. She turned it slowly, feeling the smooth metal, wondering what designs were etched into its surface. Protected, marked, claimed, whether she wanted it or not. The city would see the ring and draw its own conclusions. She was now connected to one of its most dangerous men, for better or worse. The antidote hummed through her veins, chasing away the poison's grip, but it bought only 3 days. After that, she pushed the thought away. For now, she was alive. For now, she wore a ring that meant both safety and danger. Outside her window, the city continued its nighttime symphony. Distant sirens, the rumble of traffic, the whisper of wind between buildings, familiar sounds that now carried new meaning. She was part of a different world now, one where blood oaths and symbolic gestures carried the weight of life and death. Sleep eluded her as she lay in the dark, fingers constantly returning to the ring. Its presence was impossible to ignore. Like the security cameras, she could hear humming in the corners. Like the knowledge that somewhere in this penthouse, Alaric Voss was planning his next move. The night stretched, on, marked by the steady beep of monitors and the soft rustle of wind against windows. Isolde turned the ring, again and again, its metal warming to her touch, while the city below transformed itself into something darker, more dangerous, and infinitely more complex than she'd ever imagined. Sunlight warmed Isolde's face as she traced her fingers along the textured strip Alaric had placed on the wall. 1, 2, 3 steps from the bed to the bathroom door, 7 more to the closet. The penthouse slowly took shape in her mind, a map built of touches and echoes. "Kitchen's 30 degrees left," Alaric's voice came from across the room. "Granite counters. Watch the corners." She appreciated that he didn't hover, giving instructions only when needed. Her cane tapped against the counter edge, finding the rubber bumper he'd installed. How many rooms? 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, office, library, living space. His voice tracked her movement. "Main suite has a panic room behind the bookcase. You're standing in the open concept area." Isolde noted how sound carried differently in each space. The kitchen's tile bounce, the living room's carpet hush. The windows? Bulletproof. Terrace wraps the east and south sides. She made her way to what felt like a door, hand finding the biometric panel. It hummed, but didn't unlock. "Only responds to my voice or your ring," he explained. "Same for the elevator and external doors." "A gilded cage is still a cage." She tested another door, locked. A necessary one. His footsteps remained distant, but tracking. 3 days to find a permanent cure. I need you alive for that." She explored further, counting steps between landmarks, building her mental blueprint. The penthouse was immense, yet she felt the weight of his attention following her movements. Not suffocating, more like a shadow keeping pace. The afternoon light had just begun to fade when everything changed. A soft scrape in the hallway outside made Alaric move faster than she'd thought possible. His body pressed her against the wall as a sharp crack split the air. The drywall shuddered behind her. Another crack, a gunshot, she realized, and Alaric's warmth disappeared. There was a brutal scuffle, a wet thud, then silence. "Stay where you are," he ordered. His voice was ice. She heard him speaking rapidly into a phone, calling for cleanup. When he returned to her side, his hand found hers. "Here." He guided her fingers to the wall where she'd been standing. "Feel this?" Her fingertips found a rough hole in the drywall. "The bullet?" "Yes. Understanding the danger keeps you alive." His voice was closer now, intimate despite its coldness. "That shot would have hit your spine." She traced the damage, processing how close death had come. "You're hurt." "Graze, nothing serious." But she heard the strain beneath his control. "Sit down," she insisted, hand finding his arm. "Let me check. The medical team is coming." "Sit, please." Something in her voice made him comply. She followed his movement to the couch, fingers carefully exploring until they found warm wetness on his shoulder. "Your suit's ruined." "I have others." His breath caught slightly as she probed the wound. "Thank you," she said softly, "for taking that bullet." The silence between them thickened. She was acutely aware of his proximity, the heat radiating from his body, the controlled pattern of his breathing. Her fingers lingered near the tear in his jacket. "I protect what's mine." His voice was low, almost gentle. "Is that what I am? Yours?" "You're under my protection." But he didn't move away from her touch. The medical team arrived then, breaking the moment. Isolde listened to them treating his wound, cataloging every hiss of pain he tried to suppress. When they left, his phone began ringing constantly, reports, orders, security adjustments. She dozed on the couch while he worked, his voice a steady murmur in the background. At some point, he must have carried her to bed, because she woke there briefly as evening fell. "Sleep," he said from nearby. "I've doubled the guards. No one gets through again." She drifted off to the rhythm of his voice, giving quiet orders, the sound somehow as effective as any lullaby. The last thing she registered was the soft scrape of his chair, moving closer to her bed, positioning himself between her and the door. His presence should have made her feel trapped. Instead, she felt oddly safe, despite the day's violence. The ring on her finger caught on the sheets as she turned, a constant reminder of her new reality. In the space between waking and sleeping, she wondered if Alaric ever truly rested, or if he spent every night standing guard against the darkness he knew so well. The penthouse settled into nighttime quiet, broken only by the soft tap of Alaric's fingers on his phone and the steady breath of guards in the hallway. Even the city seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what tomorrow would bring. 3 days to find a cure, 3 days in this strange new world of violence and protection, where a single ring could mean the difference between life and death. Isolde let herself sink deeper into sleep, knowing that despite the danger, or perhaps because of it, she was safer here than anywhere else in the city. The man keeping watch might be dangerous, but tonight his danger was her shield. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new boundaries to test. For now, she rested under the protection of a man who took bullets without hesitation and spoke of possession in the same breath as safety. Dawn crept across the penthouse windows, painting shadows on Isolde's face as she sat in an armchair, fingers tracing the smooth surface of her cane. The quiet hum of computers and worried whispers filled the room. Alaric's hacker had been working through the night, the click of keys a constant rhythm. "Sir!" the hacker's voice cracked. "I found something." Isolde heard Alaric's measured footsteps cross the room, followed by a sharp intake of breath that made her spine stiffen. "Explain." His voice was deadly quiet. "The molecular structure it matches experimental compounds from a black lab." The hacker hesitated. "One your father funded before his death." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the air seemed to freeze. Isolde could hear Alaric's breathing change, becoming ragged at the edges. "Show me." Papers rustled. "Everything." Isolde pushed herself up, using her cane to navigate toward his voice. The tip caught on something, a chair leg maybe, and Alaric's hand immediately steadied her elbow. "Your father," she said softly. "He created this?" "Funded it!" His voice was raw. The lab developed experimental compounds, weapons. A pause. I shut it down when I took control. She reached out, finding his wrist. His pulse hammered against her fingers. This isn't your fault. My blood. My legacy. Each word seemed torn from him. Guilt won't save me. She tightened her grip on his wrist. Action will. Where are the records? A long moment passed before he answered. Most were destroyed, but there was a ledger cache. Backup documentation kept off-site. Where? A warehouse, near the docks. His voice steadied slightly. It's been sealed since I took power. Then that's where we start. The day passed in careful preparation. Isolde listened as Alaric deployed teams, coordinated surveillance, planned entry points. Rain started falling again as evening approached, drumming against the windows. Stay here, he said when it was time. No, she stood firm. I'm coming with you. It's not safe. Nothing is safe right now, but I refuse to sit here while others decide my fate. She lifted her chin. I'm already dying. What's the worst that could happen? A sound caught between a laugh and a growl escaped him. You are impossible. So I've been told. The ride to the docks was tense. Isolde sat in the armored car, counting turns, measuring time. The rain intensified, pounding the roof. When they stopped, Alaric helped her out, guiding her steps. 3 teams in position, he murmured. We wait until the dock patrol passes. They sheltered in a nearby building. Isolde focused on the sounds. Footsteps on wet concrete, distant boat horns, the subtle clicks of weapons being checked. Alaric's breath beside her was steady now, controlled. Patrol's clear, someone whispered. They moved. Alaric kept one hand on her elbow, describing obstacles in low murmurs. Step up, door frame, 3 steps down. The warehouse smelled of rust and old paper. Their footsteps echoed. Isolde stayed still while the team searched, listening to their movements through the space. Here, a voice called out. Hidden compartment under the floor, more movement. The scrape of metal on concrete, papers rustling. Found them! Alaric's voice was tight with tension. Multiple ledgers and... He paused. Synthesis notes, partial formula for a second stage antidote. Will it work? Isolde asked. It's risky, experimental. His fingers brushed her arm. But it might be all we have. They transported everything back to the penthouse. Isolde sat on the couch while a forensics team carefully scanned each page, the soft whir of equipment filling the room. Her head ached with fatigue, but she refused to sleep. You should rest, Alaric said, closer than she'd realized. So should you. I don't need... Yes, you do. She reached out, finding his shoulder. You're no good to anyone exhausted. He caught her hand, his thumb running over her knuckles. The touch sent warmth through her tired body. I will burn it all down, he whispered, so quietly she almost missed it. Every sin, every dark legacy my blood created, I'll destroy it all if it keeps your heart beating. Isolde squeezed his hand, hearing the weight of generations in his voice, the burden of inherited crimes. Outside, the rain continued falling, washing the city clean. Inside, machines hummed as they worked to unlock secrets that might save her life, while a man who dealt in death promised to tear down his own history to protect her. The forensics team worked through the night, the quiet rustle of papers and soft beeps of equipment creating a strange lullaby. Alaric remained beside her, his hand still holding hers, as if letting go might make her disappear. The poison continued its slow work in her blood, but for now she was still breathing, still fighting, and she wasn't fighting alone. Dawn painted the penthouse windows in pale gold when Alaric's phone buzzed. Isolde sat at the kitchen counter, fingers wrapped around a warm mug of tea, listening to his footsteps pause mid-stride. Say that again, he ordered into the phone, his voice tight. Papers rustled on the other end. Send everything, now! What is it? Isolde asked, tracking his movement as he approached. Hospital records, from 20 years ago. He set something down, likely a tablet, and pulled out the chair beside her. A fire at St. Augustine's Children's Ward in Georgia. They listed you among the casualties. Her hands trembled around the mug. That's impossible. I grew up in foster care in New York. Because someone moved you here after the fire. His voice softened. Isolde, you're Elena Romano, sole heir to the Romano Syndicate. Your parents died in a yacht explosion. The words fell from numb lips. Fragments of memory stirred. Warm hands, violin music, the scent of gardenias. I was 4. I remember smoke, screaming. The fire wasn't an accident. Someone wanted the Romano line erased. Keys clicked as Alaric typed. Your adoption records were buried deep, if my people hadn't been searching every database. Looking for what? Anything that might explain why you were targeted. His chair scraped closer. This changes everything. You're not just a witness to eliminate anymore. You're leverage, a lost heir who could claim territory and alliances. His oldest fingers found the ring on her hand, the one he'd given her for protection. How long before others find out? Hours, maybe less. He stood pacing. We need to move fast. A formal alliance would shut down most attempts at kidnapping or assassination. Formal alliance? She caught the careful neutrality in his tone. You mean marriage? A ceremony, tonight, private, with witnesses who matter in our world. He stopped moving. It would be tactical. A shield. Like this ring? His breath caught. Yes. Isolde set down her mug and stood, using the counter to orient herself. I won't be a silent puppet bride, Alaric. If we do this, I set terms. Name them. I speak my own vows, I keep my name, and I want your word that I maintain autonomy over my choices, my body, my future. She lifted her chin. I won't trade one cage for another. Done. The word carried weight, like a key turning in a lock. I'll arrange everything. The day blurred into preparation. Isolde listened to phones ringing, orders given, security doubling. By afternoon, whispers of her identity had spread through the underworld. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from unknown numbers. Threats, bribes, promises of protection. A dress arrived, silk by the feel, with delicate beading. A woman helped her dress and arrange her hair, weaving tiny flowers into the strands. Isolde's fingers traced the petals. Gardenias? Mr. Voss was specific about the flowers, the woman replied. The ceremony began at sunset in the penthouse's great room. Isolde counted 12 witnesses by their breathing patterns and footsteps. The priest's voice was elderly but clear, speaking ancient words in Italian first, then English. When it came time for vows, Alaric spoke first. His voice carried authority and something deeper, more raw. I offer protection without possession, partnership without demands, my resources, my influence, my life if needed, freely given, never forced. Isolde's turn came. She spoke slowly, each word chosen with care. I choose this alliance knowing its weight. I offer loyalty without submission, trust without surrender. I will stand as your equal, never your possession. Where you protect, I will guard. Where you lead, I will challenge. This is my choice, my terms, my vow. The priest pronounced them married. Alaric's lips brushed her knuckles, then her forehead. Gentle, almost reverent touches that made her skin tingle. The small reception flowed through the penthouse. Isolde recognized some voices, allies who'd helped search for the antidote, captains who'd guarded the building. Crystal clinked, conversation hummed, and somewhere a piano played softly. She found her way to the music room, drawn by the familiar scent of polished wood and rosin. Her violin case sat in its usual spot near the window. You should rest, Alaric said from the doorway, in a minute. She turned toward his voice. Dance with me first. His footsteps approached. Strong hands settled, at her waist, and she laid her palms against his chest, feeling his heartbeat through fine wool. The poison is still killing me, she finished. But right now I'm alive, dancing at my wedding. Let me have this moment. They swayed to the distant piano music. His chin rested against her hair, and she breathed in his scent. Cedar, coffee, gun oil. Thank you, she whispered. For the gardenias, I remember my mother wore them. His arms tightened fractionally. I had them traced from the Romano estate records. Isolde lifted her face, one hand finding his jaw. She rose on her toes and kissed him. Soft at first, then deeper when his breath hitched. He tasted like expensive whiskey and unspoken promises. When they broke apart, he pressed his forehead to hers. Isolde. I know. She smiled slightly. We're both in danger now, but at least we're facing it together. They stood by the window afterward, his arm around her waist as she listened to the city sounds far below. Traffic and sirens, music and voices, all the chaos of New York at night. He described the view, painting pictures of lights strung like stars between buildings, of shadows and gleaming steel and endless possibility. The poison still coursed through her veins. Enemies still circled. But here, in this moment, she was Elena Romano reborn, and Isolde heart unchanged. a lost heir and a street musician, a tactical bride and a woman who chose her own path. She leaned into Alaric's solid warmth, feeling the weight of his ring, knowing that whatever came next, neither of them would face it alone. Dawn crept over New York, painting the penthouse windows in pale gold. Alaric stood at his desk, phone pressed to his ear, his shadow long against the polished floor. "Repeat that." Isolde sat on the leather couch, fingers trailing over a tactile map of the underground tunnels. Her other hand absently touched her wedding ring, still new and strange on her finger. "The chemist!" Alaric's voice held lethal focus. "Marcel Klein. Worked the synthesis lab from 09 to 14. Last confirmed sighting in the maintenance tunnels under the East River. My father's records show his signature on 3 experimental compounds." Isolde's head lifted. "The ones matching my blood work?" "Yes." He crossed to her, footsteps measured. "He's been living off-grid since the lab shut down. Paranoid, smart. But my people found a pattern. He surfaces for supplies near the tunnel access points." "When do we move?" "We?" The word carried warning. "I'm not staying behind while you chase my only lead." She stood, cane planted firmly. "I can navigate tight spaces. I can fight if needed. And I'm running out of time." Silence stretched. Then, "Training room, 1 hour." The security instructor, Maria, had a fighter's grace in her movements. She guided Isolde through defensive strikes, teaching her to use her cane as both weapon and shield. "Lead with your core," she explained. "Sound and air pressure will tell you where they are. Strike here!" She positioned Isolde's elbow. "And here. Vulnerable points don't move, blind or sighted." They practiced for hours. Isolde learned to read attack patterns from footsteps, to spin away from grabs, to use her smaller frame as an advantage. Her muscles burned, but determination drove her harder. Alaric watched from the doorway. She felt his presence like a heat signature. By afternoon, they prepared for the descent. Isolde changed into tactical gear, fitted pants, reinforced jacket, boots with reliable grip. Alaric helped her adjust the earpiece that would keep them connected. 3 teams will sweep the main tunnels, he explained, checking his weapons. We take the maintenance shaft near the old pumping station. Klein knows those routes best. His hand brushed her shoulder. Stay close. Move only when I say. Twilight found them at the tunnel entrance, cold air rushing up from below. Isolde counted 12 steps down, her cane finding each edge. Water dripped somewhere distant. The air smelled of rust and river mud. 3 steps forward, Alaric murmured in her ear. Left rail for balance, low ceiling for 20 feet. They moved through the darkness like ghosts. Isolde's world narrowed to Alaric's quiet instructions, the tap of her cane, the echoes that mapped spaces she couldn't see. Other teams reported in through their earpieces. All clear, no contact, moving to Sector 4. The first shot cracked like thunder. Alaric moved instantly, pressing her against the wall. Down, he ordered. Count 3 breaths, then follow my lead. Gunfire erupted, bullets sparking off metal. Isolde felt the vibrations through the concrete at her back. Alaric's movements were precise, lethal, each shot followed by a body falling. He kept up a steady stream of positioning cues. 2 hostiles, 10 o'clock. Step back 3 paces, rail to your right, duck now. She moved as instructed, turning their retreat into a deadly dance. Her cane found vulnerable points when someone got too close. Throat, knee, groin. Alaric's violence was orchestral in its precision, but he never let her lose orientation. Klein ahead, he breathed. Behind the junction box, 3 hired guns with him. Backup teams converging, crackled the radio. More shots. A grenade blast shook the tunnel. Isolde felt the heat wash past, but Alaric's body shielded her from debris. Last chance, Klein, Alaric's voice echoed. Surrender or die screaming. Silence stretched. Then, don't shoot! I'm coming out! Hands visible. 10 steps forward. Isolde heard unsteady footsteps, harsh breathing. The chemist smelled of fear and chemicals. The formula, Alaric demanded. Where? Storage unit. Red hook. I'll give you coordinates. Just don't. Shut up! Zip ties rustled as Alaric bound him. You'll tell us everything after we're somewhere more private. He guided Isolde back through the tunnels, one hand steady at her elbow. Teams secured their exit, boots thundering on metal. Catwalks. Somewhere above, sirens began to wail. The SUV waited at street level, engine running. Alaric helped Isolde into the front seat, then roughly shoved Klein into the back with 2 guards. The chemist whimpered when someone tightened his restraints. They accelerated into traffic, taking corners fast but controlled. Isolde felt the city's pulse change as they moved from Manhattan to Brooklyn, the sounds shifting from chrome and glass to brick and steel. "Status?" she asked quietly. "3 wounded on our side, nothing critical. Klein's hired guns are dead or captured. NYPD will find evidence of a gang dispute over territory." His hand found hers briefly. "You did well in there." "You're bleeding." Gray's wound, already clotting. She touched his arm, feeling the torn fabric, the tacky warmth of blood. "Promise me it's minor." "Promise." He squeezed her fingers. "Rest now. We have what we needed." Isolde leaned back, listening to Klein's terrified breathing from the rear seat, to the distant sirens fading behind them, to the steady thrum of the engine carrying them toward answers. Her muscles ached from the fight, and her time was still running out, but they had a lead, coordinates to an antidote that might save her life. The SUV turned onto quieter streets, moving deeper into Brooklyn's industrial maze. Alaric maintained radio contact with their escort vehicles, voice calm as he directed their convoy toward the safe house, where Klein would tell them everything he knew about the poison slowly killing her. The safe house crouched in shadow, a nondescript 3-story walk-up with reinforced doors and blackout windows. Dawn hadn't yet touched the sky when they guided Klein through the back entrance. Isolde counted the steps, 14 to the second floor, then a sharp right into a room that smelled of coffee and gun oil. "Sit!" Alaric ordered Klein. Metal scraped concrete as someone positioned a chair. "Start with the antidote composition." Klein's breath hitched. It's not that simple. The second stage compound needs a fresh stabilizing agent." "Who has it?" "Taras Volkov." Klein's voice shook. "He bought the whole stock when the lab shut down." Isolde felt Alaric go still beside her. The name carried weight, drew tension into the room like a wire pulling tight. "Details," Alaric said flatly. "Every component." For the next hour, Klein rambled through chemical formulas and synthesis protocols while a recorder captured every word. Lab technicians arrived, setting up temporary equipment in the kitchen. The smell of antiseptic mixed with brewing coffee. Gideon's arrival brought fresh energy to the room. "I can get us a courier slot," he offered. "Volkov's people know me from previous trades." "Timeline?" Alaric asked. "This afternoon. I'll set it up now." Isolde tracked Gideon's movements by sound, fingers tapping on phone screens, shoes crossing tile, a delayed pause before each response. Small details that seemed to catch Alaric's attention too, his breathing shifting subtly when Gideon misquoted a meeting time. The lab team worked in the kitchen, glass clinking as they prepared what doses they could from Klein's initial formula. Isolde found a narrow sofa against one wall and settled there, exhaustion seeping into her bones. Alaric's presence remained constant, either beside her or within easy reach. "You should rest," she told him. "I'm fine." She reached out, found his arm, and traced upward to where fabric gave way to skin. A raised line of scar tissue crossed his chest diagonally. "Tell me about this one," she said softly. His muscles tensed under her fingers, then gradually relaxed. "I was 12. Father's rivals sent a team to make a point." His voice dropped lower, meant for her ears alone. 3 men with knives. I killed 2 before backup arrived. That's when you learn to fight. That's when I became the weapon my father wanted. Bitterness edged his words. Every day after that was training, combat, strategy, how to hurt people efficiently. Isolde's hand stayed on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. And now. He covered her fingers with his. "Now the only peace I know is listening to you breathe." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Around them, the safe house hummed with activity, guards rotating shifts, lab techs conferring in low voices, Gideon's boots pacing the hallway as he made calls. Early afternoon brought a message with coordinates. Alaric read them twice, something in his tone suggesting distrust. "We're running out of options," Gideon pointed out. "And time." Isolde felt Alaric's tension. "What's wrong?" "The location, the timing, something's off." He stood, restless energy in his movements. "But we need that reagent." The lab team packed their equipment while guards prepared for movement. Isolde listened to weapons being checked, tactical gear being distributed, comms being tested. Through it all, Alaric remained close, his attention split between operational details and her condition. "Your temperature is rising," he noted, touching her forehead. "I'm okay." She wasn't, but they both knew that. "How long until sunset?" 2 hours. We'll move then." He helped her up, steadying her when dizziness hit. "Stay behind me at the exchange, no matter what happens." They loaded into vehicles as the day's heat began to fade. Isolde sat in the lead SUV's passenger seat, her cane across her lap, listening to the city transition around them. Street sounds changed texture. Concrete to asphalt, commercial to industrial. Alaric drove, one hand occasionally brushing her arm as if reassuring himself of her presence. The convoy moved like a dark current through Brooklyn streets. Isolde felt the moment sunset arrived. A subtle shift in temperature, a different quality to the air coming through the vents. City lights flickered on one by one, creating an electric constellation she could sense but not see. Alaric's phone buzzed. After reading the message, his breathing changed, the smallest tell of concern. "Second thoughts?" she asked quietly. "Too many variables." His voice was tight with control. "Gideon's intel feels incomplete. But we go anyway. We go anyway." He took her hand, squeezed once. "Because keeping you alive matters more than my instincts right now." Their convoy rolled on through the deepening twilight. Isolde focused on mapping their route by sound and motion, counting turns, noting the echo patterns of buildings, building a mental image of their path through the city. Behind them, 3 vehicles maintained perfect spacing. Ahead lay the exchange point, and whatever trap or salvation waited with it. She thought of Alaric's scar, of the boy who became a weapon, of the man who now used that training to protect rather than destroy. His presence beside her was both comfort and coiled violence, the paradox that had drawn her from the first night in the rain. The SUV slowed, turning onto rougher pavement. Somewhere nearby, water lapped against pilings. The smell of salt and diesel filtered through the ventilation system. Their convoy arranged itself in practice formation, engines idling as the last light bled from the sky and the city's artificial stars burned above them. Night spilled across the warehouse floor as Alaric led their team inside. The space yawned vast and hollow, steel beams vanishing into darkness above. Isolde's cane tapped softly as she followed his guidance, her steps precise and measured. 3 o'clock, support column, he murmured. 7 o'clock, loading bay. The courier was supposed to meet them with Volkov's reagent, a simple exchange. But the moment they reached the center of the floor, Alaric's instincts screamed. Red laser dots suddenly bloomed across the concrete like deadly flowers. "Down!" He yanked Isolde behind a concrete barrier as gunfire erupted from the catwalks. The warehouse exploded into chaos, muzzle flashes, the thunder of automatic weapons, bullets sparking off metal. Alaric moved like a machine, each shot precise and lethal. 2 gunmen fell from the walkways, then 3 more. His men returned fire, taking positions around the perimeter. But something was wrong. The attackers' movement suggested preparation, like they'd been waiting. "Stay here!" he ordered Isolde, pressing her hand against the barrier. "Count to 50 before moving." He broke cover, rolling to another position as rounds tracked him. A shooter appeared on his left, dead before they could squeeze the trigger. Another tried to flank, dropped with mechanical efficiency. Alaric's violence was cold, practiced, inevitable. Glass shattered nearby, the backup vial from the safe house, its contents spreading useless across the floor. Isolde flinched at the sound, but held her position, counting under her breath as instructed. Then everything went wrong. A side door scraped open behind her. Before she could call out, hands grabbed her roughly and dragged her away from safety. Her cane clattered to the ground, along with the small, tactile marker she used to orient herself, the one Alaric had made specifically for her. "Alaric!" Her cry was muffled as they pulled her through the door. He spun at her voice, but more gunmen appeared, forcing him to deal with immediate threats. Each shot dropped an attacker, his expression growing more lethal with every body that fell. The warehouse floor became a graveyard of Volkov's men. When the last echo died, Alaric found only empty space where Isolde had been. Her marker lay abandoned beside a smear of industrial oil. His fingers closed around the small metal disc, still warm from her touch. His phone emerged, voice deadly calm as he issued orders that would paralyze the city. "Lock down every port, freeze all accounts linked to Volkov. I want every street, alley, and rat hole sealed." A pause, then. 5 million for information, 10 million for her location. Anyone who touches her loses everything: family, fortune, life. Make it known. Hours crawled by like centuries. His men swept building after building, while Alaric coordinated from the warehouse, turning it into a temporary command center. Screens showed surveillance feeds, traffic cameras, port activity. Nothing moved in New York without his knowledge tonight. Close to midnight, boots scraped the concrete. Gideon appeared, favoring his right leg. "Ambush at the docks!" he reported, grimacing. Lost them in the containers. Alaric watched him, expression unreadable. The limp was wrong. Too consistent, too careful. Gideon's story of pursuit contained details that didn't align with the port cameras. Small inconsistencies that would have fooled anyone else. But Alaric had been reading betrayal since childhood. He let nothing show on his face, nodding as if accepting the report. Better to let the lie play out, to follow it back to its source. Somewhere in this web of deceit was the truth about Isolde's location. Get medical, he ordered. Oh, we'll regroup at dawn. Gideon hesitated a fraction too long before limping away. Alaric's fingers tightened on Isolde's marker, the metal edges biting into his palm. Alone in the warehouse, surrounded by the bodies of men who dared stand between them, he made a silent promise that would reshape the underworld. Every person involved would pay. Every secret would be torn open. Every lie would be burned away until only truth remained. He would dismantle empires, topple kings, and salt the earth where they fell. The marker pressed deeper into his skin as his fist clenched. Somewhere in his city, Isolde was waiting. She would be counting his steps, mapping sounds, staying sharp despite her fear. She would know he was coming. Blood darkened the concrete where bodies lay cooling. Brass casings caught the emergency lights, gleaming like fallen stars. In this graveyard of betrayal, Alaric stood motionless, a statue carved from shadow and vengeance. The night pressed. Against high windows, and somewhere beyond them, his city held its breath, waiting to see what destruction love would bring. Tomorrow would be a day of reckoning. But tonight, in this hollow space where everything had gone wrong, Alaric made his vow. The marker in his hand was a compass pointing toward retribution. Everyone who stood between him and Isolde would learn why the underworld whispered his name like a prayer to death itself. The warehouse kept its silence, bearing witness. Outside, his men moved through darkness, spreading his will across the city like a fever. Inside, Alaric remained still, letting the rage build slowly, carefully, until it was a weapon as precise as any gun. They had taken what was his, they had broken faith, they had forgotten who ruled these shadows. He would remind them. Dawn crept over New York, finding Alaric bent over screens and maps in his command center. Data scrolled past. Fuel manifests, medical supply routes, intercepted burner phone signals. Every thread led to Volkov's web. Cross-reference these delivery patterns, he ordered his analysts. Find the overlap. 3 locations emerged. 2 were decoys. The logistics didn't support a hostage operation. But the third, an old textile mill converted to luxury offices, showed consistent patterns. Weekly fuel drops, triple the building's needs, medical supplies routed through shell companies, and unusual electricity consumption. His phone buzzed. A terrified street dealer, one of many informants squeezed for intel, confirmed seeing Volkov's cars near the mill. More reports trickled in. Muscle gathering, security increased, unusual activity behind blacked-out windows. Alaric's attention shifted to surveillance footage from the warehouse ambush. Frame by frame, he watched Gideon's movements before the attack. The betrayal revealed itself in pixels. A text sent 3 minutes before the gunman appeared. Coordinates passed through encrypted channels. The careful orchestration of chaos. Keep him visible, Alaric told his security chief, but contained. Throughout the morning, he assembled his response team. Ex-military specialists, demolition experts, combat medics. A private jet touched down at noon, delivering a trauma surgeon who specialized in experimental treatments. The doctor carried a steel case containing an untested antidote, their only hope if they reached Isolde in time. The compound is unstable, the surgeon warned, checking the vials. We'll have minutes to administer it once mixed. Alaric nodded, adding this deadline to the many ticking clocks in his head. Time was a luxury they didn't have. Inside Volkov's fortress, Isolde sat perfectly still on a hard chair, listening. The room was expensively furnished. She could tell by the acoustics, the way sound bounced off leather and wood. Their attempts to disorient her with random noise and taunts had failed. She'd turned their tactics into mapping tools. Your protector's empire is crumbling. A guard sneered. Soon there won't be anything left of what he built. Isolde didn't respond. She was counting footsteps in the hallway, building a mental diagram of patrol patterns. 6 steps to the door, 20 steps to the corner, heavy boots every 30 minutes when shifts changed. Her fingers found the loose vent cover again, carefully working at the screw. Metal groaned softly, then gave. She palmed the sharp shard, letting her sleeve cover it. A weapon was a weapon, no matter how small. Back at his command center, Alaric watched Gideon through cameras as his former lieutenant paced a secure room. The space was wired for sound, recording every call, every muttered word. When evening approached, Alaric entered. "Sit!" The word carried weight that pushed Gideon into a chair. Alaric played the recordings. Gideon's calls to Volkov, the exchange of information, the price of betrayal. Each damning word filled the space between them. 10 years of loyalty, Alaric said softly, traded for a promise of power. He removed Gideon's lieutenant's pin with surgical precision. "You forgot who taught you everything you know about betrayal." They offered silence. Alaric's voice could have frozen flame. "Your judgment comes later, after she's safe. Until then, you'll watch what your ambition has wrought." Gideon sat, stripped of rank and protection, as Alaric left him to contemplate his fate. Night settled over the textile mill like a shroud. In the service tunnel below, Alaric's team worked with practiced efficiency, placing charges at structural points. They moved like shadows, each step calculated, each explosive precisely positioned. "Charges set on level 1, came the whispered confirmation through comms. "Moving to secondary positions." Alaric checked his watch. The surgeon waited in a mobile unit 3 blocks away. The antidote was prepared. Strike teams held position at every exit. Years of wielding power had taught him patience, but tonight each second felt like warfare against time itself. Above, Isolde sat in her gilded cage, metal shard pressed against her palm, counting minutes by heartbeats. She had mapped every corner of her prison, memorized every sound, prepared for whatever came next. She was no helpless pawn, regardless of what her captors believed. The fortress loomed against the darkening sky, its windows gleaming like blind eyes. Inside its walls, guards made their rounds, unaware of the forces gathering beneath their feet. Alaric's men finished setting the final charges, each explosive a promise of the chaos to come. Multiple teams held position around the perimeter, waiting for the signal that would turn this quiet night into an inferno of precision and purpose. Every angle was covered, every contingency planned for. The massive building sat unknowing, its occupants blind to the net closing around them. Through hidden earpieces, Alaric's strike force received last-minute updates. Guard rotations, access codes, structural weak points. Each piece of intelligence brought them closer to their goal. The charges waited in darkness, ready to create the diversion that would split Volkov's defenses. This was the calm before a storm of Alaric's making. His men waited in shadows, weapons checked, routes memorized. Above them, Volkov's fortress stood proud and seemingly impregnable, its security unaware that their walls had already been breached from below. The digital display blinked 23:57 when Alaric gave the signal. In an instant, the fortress plunged into darkness as his team cut main power and auxiliaries simultaneously. 3 seconds later, synchronized explosions rocked the building's foundation and reinforced doors blew inward with calculated precision. Alaric moved like liquid shadow through the chaos, his boots silent on steel stairs as smoke filled the corridors. "East wing clear," he murmured into comms. "Redirect civilians to the loading bay exit." His voice remained steady, controlled, even as gunfire erupted 2 floors above. "Copy that," came the response. "Civilian staff moving south, no casualties." In her locked suite, Isolde felt the building shudder. The familiar hum of climate control died, replaced by shouts and running feet. Her fingers worked quickly, manipulating the metal shard she'd pried loose earlier. The cheap handcuff lock was an insult. They'd underestimated her again. With a soft click, one cuff sprang free. She wrapped the chain around her right hand, leaving enough slack to swing. The metal felt cold and reassuring against her palm. Isolde pressed herself against the wall beside the door, counting footsteps in the hallway. The guard rotation had become erratic, but she could still track their patterns through sound. Heavy boots approached, faster than usual, panicked, keys jangled, the door swung inward. "Get up, we're move!" Isolde struck low and hard, driving her weight behind the blow. The chain connected with the guard's knee, cartilage crunched. He dropped with a strangled cry, keys clattering on marble flooring. Isolde's trained ear caught the metallic sound, and she snatched them up in one fluid motion. The building groaned around her as more explosions rippled through lower levels. Cold air whispered from her left. A draft. Following it led her to a fire stairwell, its metal door cooler than the surrounding walls. Isolde traced the railing with her free hand, descending quickly but carefully. 3 floors below, Alaric eliminated resistance with mechanical efficiency. His team had the advantage of night vision gear, turning darkened corridors into killing grounds. Shell casings rang against concrete as he advanced, each shot precise. Target located, crackled his earpiece. Volkov's barricaded in the executive office, north corner. Copy, maintain containment. Alaric checked his position against the building schematic in his mind. The stairwell ahead would... Movement. A figure emerging from shadows. He raised his weapon, then lowered it instantly as recognition hit. Isolde stood at the base of the stairs, chain wrapped around one hand, head cocked to track sounds of combat. Bullets sparked off the railing above them. Without hesitation, Alaric swept her into his arms. She tensed, then relaxed at his familiar scent of gunpowder and sandalwood. 3 flights down, he murmured against her hair. Then 200 meters to exfil. More shots peppered the wall as they descended. Alaric's team provided covering fire, their positions coordinated through short bursts of comm static. They moved as one unit, clearing paths, securing corners, maintaining a protective bubble around their boss and his precious cargo. Volkov's office door splintered under concentrated fire. The warlord had nowhere left to run, his security detail lay scattered through the building, his escape routes cut off. When Alaric entered, weapon raised, Volkov stood behind his desk with desperate bravado. "You can't!" Alaric's shot took him in the thigh. Volkov collapsed, cursing in multiple languages. The gun pressed against his chest, right over his hammering heart. "The reagent," Alaric said softly. "For 3 blocks of dock territory. Your choice how this ends." Blood soaked into expensive carpet as Volkov weighed his options. Finally, he gestured to a wall safe. Combination 847392. One of Alaric's men retrieved a sealed case while others maintained coverage. The reagent inside glowed faintly, nested in cooling gel. "The territory is yours," Alaric confirmed, his voice arctic. "Break this agreement and I'll finish what I started tonight." They moved fast after that. Emergency response vehicles were already approaching, their wailing sirens growing louder with each passing minute. The extraction van waited in a service alley, its engine idling. The trauma surgeon had everything prepared: sterile field, monitoring equipment, the experimental antidote components laid out in precise order. Alaric lifted Isolde onto the gurney as gently as if she were made of glass. Her hand found his arm, squeezed once. The chain still wrapped around her palm clinked softly. "Status?" the surgeon asked, already checking vital signs. "Conscious and stable," Alaric reported. "No new injuries." The van doors slammed shut. They pulled away from the fortress, now lit by emergency lights and echoing with approaching sirens. In the back, the surgeon worked quickly, combining the reagent with the base compound they'd prepared earlier. Isolde lay still under harsh medical lights, her breathing steady. The chain slowly uncurled from her hand, revealing red marks where she'd gripped it so tightly. Even now, she remained alert, tracking every sound and movement around her. Alaric watched the surgeon's hands hover over vials and syringes, each motion precise and measured. The reagent case sat secured nearby, its contents possibly the difference between life and death. Outside, sirens Dopplered past as emergency. Vehicles converged on the fortress they'd left behind. The van wound through back streets, following a pre-planned route to their secure medical facility. Every few minutes, the driver reported their position in clipped tones. No pursuit, no complications. Just the race against time, as the surgeon prepared to administer an antidote they could only pray would work. The clinic's harsh fluorescent lights cast shadows across tired faces as dawn approached. Medical equipment hummed and beeped in steady rhythms while the surgeon worked at a steel counter, combining the reagent with compounds from the black lab's recovered notes. His movements were precise but tense, each measurement double-checked against faded formulas. "You understand the risks?" The surgeon looked up from his work, eyes grave. "This combination is theoretical. The reagent's unstable. It could trigger cardiac arrest or complete organ failure." Alaric's jaw tightened. "And without it? Hours, maybe less." "Do it!" Isolde lay on the hospital bed, her breathing shallow but steady, her fingers twisted in the sheets as Alaric explained what was coming. She nodded once, decisive despite her fear. "Hold me," she whispered. Alaric climbed onto the bed behind her, drawing her back against his chest. His arms encircled her waist, one hand splayed across her stomach, the other gripping her shoulder. She felt small in his embrace, but her spine was steel. The surgeon approached with the syringe, its contents a pale, luminescent blue. "This will hurt," he warned, swabbing her arm. The convulsions could be severe. Alaric tightened his hold as the needle slid home. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Isolde's body went rigid. The first spasm hit like electricity. She arched against him, a strangled sound catching in her throat. Alaric held her through it, murmuring steadily in her ear as she thrashed. The monitor screamed warning tones as her heart rate spiked dangerously high. "Please," Alaric whispered, not sure who he was begging. God? Fate? He'd never prayed before, never believed in anything beyond his own power. But now? Take it all. The territory, the money, every drop of blood I've spilled. Take my empire, my violence, my life. Just let her live. Isolde convulsed again, harder. Her nails dug into his forearms hard enough to draw blood, but he barely felt it. The surgeon hovered nearby with a crash cart ready, watching the monitors with growing concern. Heart rate critical, he reported tersely. Blood pressure dropping. Another spasm racked her body. The monitors stuttered, alarms shrieking. For 3 terrible seconds, the heart rate line went flat. "No!" Alaric growled. "Fight, Isolde! Fight!" She gasped suddenly, drawing in a ragged breath. The monitors stabilized, their urgent beeping settling into more normal patterns. Slowly, the tension drained from her muscles as the worst of the reaction passed. Alaric's composure finally cracked. He pressed his face into her hair, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "You're not my possession," he confessed, voice raw. "You never were. You're my salvation. The only light in all this darkness." Hours passed in anxious vigilance. The surgeon ran constant tests, tracking vital signs and organ function. By midday, cautious optimism replaced fear. Her numbers showed steady improvement, blood work revealing the poison's hold weakening. Alaric maintained the city's lockdown from his phone, coordinating with lieutenants between medical updates. No one moved without his knowledge. No whisper of retaliation went unheard. He'd created a steel cage around them, and it would stay that way until he was certain the threat was past. They moved to a recovery suite that afternoon. Soft afternoon light filtered through bulletproof windows, casting warm patterns across the plush couch where Isolde rested against Alaric's chest. Her phone played gentle classical music, Debussy's Clair de Lune floating through hidden speakers. "The first time I heard you play," Alaric murmured, fingers trailing through her hair. "It was Bach, Partita No. 2 in D minor. You made it sound like heartbreak and hope all at once." Isolde's voice was sleepy. "I remember. You left a $100 bill in my case, but wouldn't let your guards approach. I couldn't risk frightening you away." His thumb traced circles on her shoulder. "You were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." She smiled faintly. "And now you're everything." The music shifted to something softer. Satie's Gymnopédie No. 1. Isolde's breathing deepened as exhaustion finally claimed her. Alaric fought his own fatigue, determined to keep watch a little longer, but the adrenaline of days without rest was fading. The warmth of her against him, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the peaceful music wrapping around them, it all pulled at him like an undertow. His eyes grew heavy, then closed. For the first time in days, Alaric Voss slept, holding his salvation close as evening shadows lengthened across the floor. The guards outside maintained their vigil. The city held its breath. And in that quiet room, 2 people who'd found light in darkness finally rested, safe in each other's arms while Satie's gentle notes drifted through the air like a lullaby. Morning light spilled through the penthouse windows, casting long shadows across the medical suite where Isolde sat before a series of high-contrast boards. The therapy equipment had arrived at dawn, stark black and white patterns designed to stimulate dormant neural pathways. "Tell me what you notice," the specialist encouraged, adjusting the angle of the board. Isolde tilted her head, concentrating. "There's something, not darkness exactly, like a change in pressure at the edges." From his chair nearby, Alaric looked up from the leather-bound ledgers spread across his lap. Each page detailed his father's crimes, the Black Lab's victims, families destroyed, lives ended. He'd spent the morning marking accounts for restitution, determined to burn away his poison legacy. "The temporal region shows promising activity," the specialist explained, making notes. "The toxin damage may not be permanent in the peripheral fields." Isolde reached out, fingers finding the edge of the contrast board. "It's different from before, like seeing thunder, feeling light instead of just darkness." Alaric set aside another ledger, watching her work. The morning sun caught her hair, turning it to molten copper. Her determination made his chest ache. She approached recovery like she did everything, with fierce grace and unstoppable will. By afternoon, storm clouds gathered outside as guards escorted Gideon into the penthouse. He stood in chains before Isolde, head bowed, while Alaric outlined his crimes in a voice like Arctic wind. "The traditional sentence is death," Alaric stated. "But the choice is yours, Isolde. His betrayal nearly killed you." Isolde rose from her chair, grip firm on her cane. "Death is easy. Making amends is harder." She turned toward Gideon's ragged breathing. "There's a music program I used to teach at, for blind children. You'll fund it. Everything you own goes to giving those kids instruments, lessons, opportunities." "Exile, then," Alaric decreed. "With nothing but the clothes you wear. Cross my territory again, and there won't be a second mercy." Gideon's chains rattled as he dropped to his knees. "Thank you," he whispered hoarsely. "Don't thank me," Isolde said quietly. "Prove the mercy wasn't wasted." The judgment was executed before sunset. Gideon walked out with nothing, while his considerable assets were transferred to a trust for the music program. Alaric watched him go, then turned to Isolde with something like wonder in his eyes. "You make me want to be better," he murmured, drawing her close. Evening transformed the penthouse into a glittering wonderland. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light across the gathering of friends and enemies alike. The priest who'd performed their tactical ceremony weeks ago now stood ready to bless what had become real. Alaric took Isolde's hand, sliding a new ring onto her finger, this one chosen with care, a sapphire wrapped in platinum vines. "No more tactical moves," he promised. "This is my heart, freely given." After the blessing, Isolde lifted her violin. The composition she'd written flowed through the quiet room, hope and darkness tangled together, resolution rising from chaos. As the final note faded, she smiled. "I can almost see you," she whispered, reaching up to trace his jaw. Just the outline, like a shadow against light. Alaric pressed a kiss to her palm. "Come with me." He led her onto the terrace where the city spread below like a sea of stars. The night air was cool, carrying the distant sounds of traffic and life. "I will always be what I am to the world," he said softly, drawing her into his arms. "But for you, only for you, I'll be gentle. You've given me a reason to be better, to build something worthy of the light you bring." Isolde turned in his embrace, hands finding his face. "I don't want you to be other than what you are. Just promise me one thing. Anything. Promise me you'll always be honest. No more tactical moves between us. Just truth. I swear it." His voice was rough with emotion. "Every word, every touch, every moment, nothing but truth." She rose on her toes as he bent down, their lips meeting in a kiss that held all their promises. The city hummed below, dangerous and beautiful like their love. But they'd chosen this, chosen each other, and whatever came next, they would face it together. The night wrapped around them like a cloak as they stood entwined on the terrace. Alaric held her close, memorizing the feel of her in his arms. She was his redemption, his North Star, the only pure thing in his dark world. And he would spend the rest of his life making sure she never regretted choosing to love a monster who was learning, day by day, to be a better man. Isolde smiled against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. The edges of her vision sparked with hints of light and shadow, a promise of healing to come. But even in darkness, she saw him clearly. The man beneath the monster, the gentleness behind the steel, the love behind the power. The terrace fell quiet save for their breathing and the distant pulse of the city. Above them, stars pierced the urban glow like diamonds scattered across black velvet. Below, traffic flowed in rivers of light. And between heaven and earth, two people who had found each other against all odds held on tight, letting love bridge the space between darkness and light.